All right, so we've talked about the causes of inflation. Let's talk about the costs of inflation. Well, what is inflation again? Inflation is prices going up. The price level is increasing, right? And so this is a closely watched and widely discussed issue in economics because it is thought to be a serious economic problem. However, the problem might not be exactly what you think. Which brings us to what's called the inflation fallacy, okay? Hey, does the rise in prices mean that there will be a fall, in purchasing power? Well, not necessarily. Inflation does not reduce people's real purchasing power if, and I emphasize if incomes keep pace with rising prices. All right, so it's just because there's rising prices doesn't mean necessarily that we have a fall in purchasing power. That's not necessarily the problem with inflation. However, there are still serious problems with inflation. Let's examine them in further detail. One of the most significant costs of inflation are shoe leather costs. The idea is you're running everywhere and you're wearing out the leather on your shoes. Okay, it sounds pretty minor, but just let me talk about this for a second. You get paid. Maybe your salary is $4,000 every 2 weeks. That's pretty good, right? But you've got to buy your goods right away because in a period of hyperinflation, that money is losing value day by day by day by day. In 3 days, that paycheck of $4,000 might only be worth or have a value of $2,000. So you got to pay your rent, you got to get your gas, you got to go to the grocery store, you got to pay your bills, you got to do all this right away. Money becomes like a hot potato, right? And when money is like a hot potato, you guys remember this equation? Which one of these variables is also going to change? If money's like a hot potato, then velocity is also going to go up, right? So the bad politicians in your economy are printing lots of money. It's creating a lot of inflation, but then money becomes like a hot potato, so the velocity of money just increases as well. Everybody's spending that money on the very day they get that money. Money becomes a hot potato, and then this situation, this is how really the price level or hyperinflation can really just get out of control. And it's where governments like politicians find it really hard to rein in. It's because of shoe leather costs. Money becomes a hot potato and the velocity just goes through the roof. And then there are menu costs. You got to change your pricing constantly, sometimes a few times a day, right? And of course, you're pricing it according to what your competitors are pricing it as well. So how do you know what your competitors are pricing all the time? They're changing their prices all day long too, right? So it can be a real headache, right? Maybe you want to hire some pricing consultants that can help you with that. You got to update your computer systems, print new catalogs. Well, you just forget about catalogs in that case. Customers come to your business and they're upset all the time. Hey, how come the price went up? Well, I guess, it's like depressing for everybody when the price goes up. So anyway, so there's just a lot of the consequences of this are real, right? People throughout your organization, everybody's sort of participating in the pricing policies, right? How do we price things? How do we price things? Think of your Sobeys or something like that. And you have to price all of those products accordingly, right? How is Walmart pricing their Triscuits today compared to No Frills? And so, maybe like Sobeys, for example, is just not raising their prices fast enough. So there's a cost associated with that. Anyways, it is a real challenge, right? Even advertising. How do you advertise for something on a price which is just out of date the very next day? Okay, menu costs are real in a situation of hyperinflation. Because of menu costs, inflation can cause prices to vary more between suppliers, right? Yeah, than they otherwise would, right? So, I mean, it really kind of confuses things. Suppliers aren't able to choose the exact right price. And so some people, they go to one supplier and they get a better deal just because they went to the one supplier by chance, right? And another person that maybe really needs the product went to another supplier and they have a very high price, right? But it's hard to know what the right price is. It just causes a lot of confusion. So anyway, so I mean, you guys remember, supply and demand, and sort of the function of the invisible hand here is to make sure, right, that people that really need the product, right, they're much willing to pay more for it, right, and then people that don't need the product very much, right, they're not willing to pay as much, so they end up not getting the product. But because these relative prices are all wrong and all chaotic, those consumer decisions are distorted, and markets are less able to allocate resources to their best use. Remember, who's the person that needs it, who needs that product the most? They're the people that are willing to pay the most for it, right? But that all gets distorted throughout this confusion that inflation instills in the market. Inflation also causes tax distortions. And you guessed it, when inflation goes up, when the price level goes up, you end up paying more in taxes. Let's take the first example here, which is capital gains tax. You guys know what capital gains is, I hope. Example, I buy a financial asset for $100,000 and I sell it for $110,000. I made a profit of $10,000. In that case, well, I have to pay taxes on that. We'll just say it's 25%. And 25%, and then so in this case I'm paying $2,500 in taxes. Okay, all right, that's life, that's everyday life, that's life as we know it. Let's imagine that, yeah, again, I paid $100,000 for that financial asset, and because of inflation, I'm able to sell that property for $500,000. We've had some pretty rapid inflation. You guessed it, $400,000 I'm selling it for. What do you think I'm paying taxes on? That $400,000, right? The tax rate is not indexed to the amount of inflation, right? And in this case, I'm paying 100 grand in taxes. Wow. So we definitely have some tax distortions that's caused from inflation. Let me talk about tax on interest income on the next slide. All right, so how does inflation raise the tax burden on savings? Okay, so when you make interest income, guess what? That's income, and you have to pay taxes on it, right? What do you think you pay taxes on? Do you pay taxes on the real interest rate that you make when you put money in the bank account and get an interest off it? Or do you pay taxes on the nominal interest rate? You guessed it, the answer is the nominal interest rate, right? And so the nominal interest rate is what you pay taxes on. The nominal interest rate is, as you know, the real interest rate plus the inflation rate. Okay, anyways, so we always have to think about, banks have to think about, people have to think about, what is the expected rate of inflation going to be in the future? And they have to, imagine, you guys remember from the Fisher effect, right? We know from supply and demand of money what the real interest rate is. Then we have to estimate, we have to predict what the inflation rate is going to be, and then we post our nominal interest rates on the basis of that, right? So let's examine both economies. Economy A has complete price stability, no inflation or deflation at all, right? They have 0% inflation. Okay, and then the next one, definitely does have a lot of inflation. Their central bank is not doing a very good job of achieving price stability in this case, right? And that's going to have consequences for the whole country, right? So basically, as you can see, what's going to happen, the real interest rate in this case is exactly the same. We have an inflation rate that's much higher in economy B, and so therefore that's an expected inflation rate, and so consumers, when they put money in the high interest savings account, they're going to expect a higher interest rate in order to compensate for the inflation, and they do so, and the bank knows it, and so they offer a 12% nominal interest rate on deposits at the bank. This just seems like the 1970s over again, right? Anyways, so it's great. You get 12% of interest by putting money in the bank. That sounds really great, doesn't it? It almost sounds better, but it's not, right? It's not. It's not because of the taxes, right? You pay taxes on the 12%. And let's just say it's a 25% tax rate, as you can see here. So 25% taxes times the nominal interest rate. In this case, is only 1%, right? I paid the nominal interest rate is 4%. So I pay taxes on that, the 25% taxes on that, and that equals only 1. But 25% taxes on 12 equals 3. So I'm paying a lot more taxes because of this nasty inflation, right? And then if I look at the after-tax nominal interest rate, so after taxes and everything, yes, I only get 3. 4 minus 1 equals 3, so my profit, right, that 0.75, whatever's left over, my profit in this case is 3. And in this case, the profit is 9%, but hey, we have to subtract the inflation from that, right? That 9% of earnings that I made in interest income is worth a lot less now than it was in the past, right? So the after-tax real interest rate that I've earned from profits is 3% in economy A, but only 1% in economy B. And that is how inflation can raise the tax burden on savings and ultimately discourage people from saving. Let's assume you deposit $1,000 in the bank for 1 year. Assume a tax rate of 25%, and so you deposit $1,000. So here we go. Case 1, 0 inflation, 10% nominal interest rate. And case 2, inflation, 10%, nominal interest rate of 20. In which case does the real value of your deposit grow the most? In other words, what is the real interest rate of each of them? Well, remember your real rate is going to be what? Oh, you guys remember? Nominal rate minus what? Ten minus 0 is 10%. Case 1. Sorry. And then, 20 minus 10 equals 10%. Oh, look at, they're exactly the same. Wow. Okay, so anyways, in which case do you pay the most taxes? Wow, pause this video and try to do it by yourself. All right, so you pay taxes on the money that you make in interest, and you pay taxes on the nominal interest rate always. All right, so let me see here in case 1, basically, well, the tax rate, we are assuming a 25%, 0.25, however you want to write it. And what is our nominal interest rate there? Our nominal interest rate is 10%, and we are putting $1,000 in times $1,000, and so that's going to make us pay $25 in taxes, right? Anyways, case number 2 happens, same tax rate, Everything's the same, except now we're paying a 20% interest rate, right? Wow, right? And the reason why we have such a high interest rate, nominal interest rate, right, that I'm paying taxes on is because we have such inflation, right? Anyways, times by the 1,000, and now all of a sudden I'm paying $50 in taxes. I pay more taxes in this case. And then C. C basically says compute the after-tax nominal interest rate. All right, which we already, this time is after tax. Well, we said our tax rate is going to be 25%. So, okay, so 100% of our earnings, our interest income, right, minus the 25% that we pay in taxes. Obviously, it's 75% that's going to be left over, right? So our after-tax nominal interest rate is going to be 75% of, well, what did I make? 75%. Well, in case one, 10%, right? That's how much our nominal interest rate is. We get to keep 75% of it. So we'll multiply that by 10%. And that gives us, that equals 7.5%, right? So, hey, our take-home pay is going to be 7.5%. Of course, we have to subtract our inflation, right? We always got to think about our inflation after 1 year. Oh, wow, but look at it, it's zero in this case. So, hey, our profit is going to be, yeehaw, 7.5%. But that's not going to be the case in the next one, I bet. If I know my stuff, 75% I get to keep of it. I'm getting, it's my nominal interest rate. However, nominal rate in this case is 20%, right? Not the 10. And so that's going to equal 15 percent that I get to keep. So hey, that looks like much better. Hey, look at that. I get to keep 15%. Yeehaw. Oh, what did I forget though? I forgot the inflation. Leslie, I have to subtract the inflation, don't I? And you know what the inflation rate is going to be, and look at my profit. My dwindling profit is only going to be 5%. And I lost my pen for some reason. 5%. All right, so what are some of the problems with the inflation, right? Well, it raises nominal interest rates, right? And that's what we pay taxes on and things like that. So it increases savers tax burdens, right? And lowers the after-tax real interest rate. Lots of problems associated with inflation, isn't there? Unexpected inflation redistributes wealth across the economy and among the population in a way that has nothing to do with merit or need, right? In fact, people that do better in a period of inflation are those people that have debt, right? Because the value of that debt actually decreases over time, right? So anyways, unexpected inflation helps the debtor and hurts the creditor. In this case, hurts the saver. Money is a ruler. This is another problem with inflation. Money is a ruler, right? It's a unit of account, right? So the Bank in Canada assures reliability of a commonly used unit of measurements. We want price stability. We want reliability, right? So when the Bank of Canada increases the money supply and creates inflation, it erodes the real value of the unit of account. Money, during rapid inflation anyways, money stops functioning as a store of value, and also it stops functioning as properly as a unit of account. This is the problem when you don't have price stability. All right, so I've made my case. inflation is bad, right? I think I made believers out of you. But what about deflation? Is deflation all that bad? Well, deflation means decreasing prices. That sounds pretty good. Lower prices, okay? Of course, the inflation fallacy still applies to the deflation fallacy, right? Which is, yeah, if prices go down, your wages can go down, right? And there might be more unemployment for sure in the economy when there's deflation. Anyways, but deflation is bad as well, in part because, hey, they have, a lot of the costs of deflation mirror those of inflation. Right? Menu costs, relative price variability, redistribution of wealth in a way that really doesn't make any sense, right? So in one sense, it's just as bad as inflation, but in another, it's even worse. Deflation also sort of tail spins out of control, right? Because if you think, well, what should I buy that car? And then often you think, well, if I wait 1 year, it'll be 10% cheaper. So I'm going to hold off. So that means that everybody holds off on spending, which means that everybody's incomes becomes lower, right? So people get cut. People lose their jobs. People lose their salaries, or at least in part their salaries. And things tend to tailspin, down, spiral downfall. Everything, collapses on itself. Last time we had real good deflation was the Great Depression, So anyways, which was a particularly bad deflationary episode, right? Anyways, and I don't think anything would happen quite as bad this time because we have automatic stabilizers. We have unemployment insurance and all that to sort of protect us. There are some things that protect us, but definitely in a country like ours, we tend to have deflationary depressions, unlike Indonesia, Argentina, Turkey, countries like that often have inflationary depressions. Anyway, so we always worry about deflation, right? And right now we, like I said before in previous videos, we have a central bank whose mandate is price stability. They're trying to get about consistently a 2% interest rate, inflation rate. And they're having to print, doing a lot of conventional monetary policy, also lowering of interest rates in order to create enough money to actually, fend off deflation. But, our velocity is getting lower and lower and lower. And that is in part due to the fact that the population is getting much older. So there are two key reasons why we have a deflationary environment right now. Number one is an older population. They do not spend as much, and they have a lot of money in the bank, and they want to keep it there as a store of value. They have to pay for their retirement. But another deflationary force, by the way, right, is technology, believe it or not, right? Technology helps us do things much less expensively. We can produce things a lot less expensively. We can even have an online school that's less expensive. All of the online technologies, like AI, for example, Google. These are things that are actually deflationary because they help us be more efficient at our job. They help us to be more productive. Anyways, and that's a good reason to have deflation, absolutely, because our real GDP is increasing at that time. But I just want to say that deflation is currently what the Bank of Canada is really worried about. They're worried about prices going down, and and for good reason. Another reason why they want to fend off deflation is something that we're going to learn a little bit later, but I'll just tell you right now, is the wealth effect. Right? The wealth effect means, when house prices are high, asset prices are high, bond prices are high, stock prices are high, when a lot of investments and assets are priced high, we feel a little bit more wealthy, right? When we buy our house for 300,000 and now it's worth 500,000, that makes us feel wealthy. And so that's the wealth effect. We tend to spend more money when we feel wealthy, right? That contributes to our consumer confidence. What happens during deflation? Prices come down. Houses get cheaper, stocks go down in value, bond prices go down in value. So we see prices go down and everybody feels a little bit poorer. And so that means they don't spend as much. Anyways, so deflation is really a worry for us right now. It'll be interesting to see how they will fend off deflation. Their interest rates are so low, they don't have a lot further that they can go. Yes, they can go negative, but just a little bit in order to stimulate the economy and boost up asset prices, right? In order to prevent deflation. But inevitably, they're going to run out of ammunition. So anyways, there is that speculation. I mentioned that in class. Helicopter money, all right? I mean, okay, so it's not seriously like pouring money out of helicopters here, but giving money, instead of giving money to the banks in the form of quantitative easing, we give it to people. In other words, we cut their payroll taxes, we cut their CPP contributions, we cut their EI contributions, we just give we lower taxes like that, right? So it's putting money in the hands of people, everyday people, so they can spend more, and that will boost up, or prevent deflation, I should say, really. Anyways, thanks for letting me rant, guys. I hope you thought that this chapter was interesting. I certainly do. The next chapter, chapter 14, is critical. Study hard.